Hi everybody, it's me, Kojenwa from Zebra Public Relations. I am here with the glorious Amie Watson. Didn't we meet on the flight?
We did.
We met on the flight
Serendipitous.
heading to gorgeous Barbados. And so we're in glorious Barbados right now. And Amie, I felt, was an amazing journalist to interview because you're honestly living your life, right? You're having the most amazing time just writing about food and travel.
I'm very fortunate. I realized that, yes.
I'm Amie Watson. I am a freelance journalist. I work mostly in food, in television, written pieces for magazines, En Route, Air Canada's magazine, the National Post, Montreal Gazette, and I do a lot of work for different websites, as well as not just in food, but also in tech. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and feature a lot of startups.
Awesome. So part of what we do in this series is to expose you to entrepreneurs who are living the life of their dreams and just to communicate that it is possible to actually do that. And I just wanted to ask you, Amie, what was it that prompted you to get into the industry of writing about food and drink?
It felt very natural. I was actually studying music at the time and was having way more fun writing for my blog than I was studying music. And so I started with a blog that didn't make any money, and then I figured I've got to learn how to do this professionally. I ended up learning to write freelance, just doing some classes online. I eventually went back to journalism school and turned it into a profession. So it was kind of a passion that became a profession just out of necessity. I felt like that's all I can really enjoy doing all the time.
Oh my God, I'm a big, big fan. I don't know how many of you out there have said to me, I would love to live off my work, right? I'd love to be passionate about something, whatever it is, whether it's travel or food or, you know, making cakes for a living or making shoes for a living. And I'd like to learn how to make my living off this. So how did you get to the point where this is what you do full time? Like a lot of our entrepreneurs are struggling with the concept of leap of faith, like leaving that 9 to 5 in order to jump off and fully go 100% of your time into your work. Because you've done work for like MSNBC, the National Gazette, tons of you know, articles that you've written. How did you learn to do this full time? Is it fully sustainable for you?
It is now. I still do side projects. I'm a freelancer.
Okay.
It's a lot of hustling. And I wouldn't say get out of your 9 to 5 if you don't have a plan, if you don't see the business model working for you. But something you can do is start with part-time. The nice thing about doing freelance work is that you can do it in your extra time, especially if it is something that you're passionate about. And if it's something that you can do simultaneously, then it's a little easier to make that transition. So it can be a slow adjustment, it can be a fast adjustment, it depends on what kind of contracts you can find. For me, it was a lot of networking, knowing people who were already working in the industry and who had opportunities, and then showing that you could do that work. So when you don't have a portfolio of writing initially, that's a little bit hard to break into. For me, going back to school was really important to get an internship and to get known by different editors. And then establish yourself as someone who is trustworthy, who submits on deadline, who can take edits and get a finished copy back to your editor, and just be someone that they want to work with that's reliable. And that's kind of how I ended up here in Barbados. I do other contracts in Aruba. I always travel, and whenever I'm traveling, I'll pitch articles to different online sources. But you know how much each one is going to pay, you know which editors are interested in which kinds of stories, and you know what's worth it. Because when you are on vacation, you want to make sure that you're enjoying yourself as well. And when your vacation becomes your work, you have to be careful about the balance.
Yeah, I believe they call it a workation, which is kind of what this is, a little bit of a workation.
When you're in Barbados.
Oh, when in Barbados. Oh my God. So let me ask you then, you talked about what prompted you to go into this business. You decided to take your leap of faith. What inspired you? Like, who are some of the people that have inspired you to, you know, be in this business essentially? What are some of the things you're looking at? Because I understand you have a gluten intolerance, for example, right? So is it niche
Makes it
for you?
hard to be a food writer. Yes,
Yeah.
So it is niche. My blog, multiculturosity.com. I know it's a mouthful.
Multiculturosity.com.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So that's a niche market. I definitely focus on gluten-free, dairy-free, healthy, sustainable recipes, restaurants, travel. For instance, this morning I was at a beautiful organic farmer's market here, and I found a guy who makes water kefir with local lemongrass and ginger, and that's beautiful to me. And then I'll start talking to Roger, who calls himself Reggae, who sells a variety of melons, and he calls one the Rolls Royce of mangoes. He had a giant imperial green mango. I'd never seen an imperial mango before.
I've never seen an imperial mango.
And that's what's fun.
Yeah.
Because you've been here so many times.
Yeah.
I've been to Barbados 3 times and I've never seen that before. So there's always something new to discover. And I'm not gluten intolerant to mangoes. So I can have as many mangoes as I like.
No gluten intolerance there. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so most of our entrepreneurs, let's say, would be on the other side of the editorial scheme, right? So they're maybe restaurants or cocktailiers, or maybe they want to present themselves in front of a writer like you. What would a restaurateur have to do, or someone who owned a restaurant or maybe several cocktail recipes? How would, or even a hotel present themselves in front of you to get someone like you to write about them?
Right. You need a good pitch, and actually working with a good PR firm is very helpful because you'll have the right contacts. You don't want to be sending a general info email to somebody whose name you don't necessarily know. Those are going to get deleted pretty quickly because editors at magazines, at television stations are getting so many pitches every day. So having a connection first, so if a PR person has a direct connection or a contact list, that's really helpful, because otherwise you don't even know who you're contacting and you're going to waste your time a lot of the time. Having a really strong selling point is vital, though. Like if I get an email that I don't know the person, I'll still read it if it's something that looks really interesting. And that depends on the writer, what interesting means. So often a restaurant is trying to pitch an event coming up or a special cocktail. Often you want to have a newsworthy event when you're pitching an editor, when you're pitching anybody that you kind of want their promotion. So often a restaurant is pitching a new menu item or a special farm-to-table dinner or a guest chef. Or if it's just kind of a new cocktail menu, that's not so exciting because every restaurant has a new cocktail menu. So you need something that sets you apart. In Canada, for instance, when cannabis is legalized, I know a lot of restaurateurs are going to do pop-up meat dinners.
Yes, I'm so excited.
And I mean, not low end.
Yeah.
This is going to be high end.
Yeah.
This is going to be 8-course tasting menus.
Yes.
Low dosage.
Okay,
probably.
Of course, probably.
But there are different options, and that's a huge marketing opportunity because everybody in the news is thinking, what's this going to mean for the industry? And billions of dollars for the economy. So that's an interesting way to pitch something. For example, if you have a really unique locally made liqueur that's never been used in a cocktail before, or you have an award-winning bartender that just got back from some competition, that's something that a writer can write a lead on. They can write an article focusing on that. So you want to make their job easier. You want to give them something that's actually newsworthy, that people are going to want to hear about, that they're going to want to write about, that they haven't written before.
I love it. I love it. And talk about some of the places you've traveled, because you've been to Thailand as well. I went to Thailand. I was like blown away.
Food.
Oh
my gosh.
By the food, even the street food, right? You pay $3 for some noodles on the side of the road. You're like, this is the best soup I've possibly ever tasted.
But try asking, does that contain gluten in Thai?
Oh,
a little bit tricky.
Have you learned?
I had a printout at the time.
Yeah.
It was a little tricky to walk around. And Vietnam, Malaysia as well. Penang was fabulous. But you go to markets, you talk to people, you meet people. Italy, incredible. I think if you speak the language, it makes a big difference.
Little easier.
Barbados, for example, really easy.
Yeah.
We all speak English here. It's a culture that it's very warm. We're very open, and you see those kind of cultural differences with food. That's something I like to do with my writing as well, is kind of create a story around a place or a person. If you can have something that your readers or your audience can relate to, and same with marketing, it makes it that much easier to sell.
Yeah, and you're pretty easy to sell, right? Because you've been on television many times, right? Just talking about various recipes and ideas, no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In a lot of restaurants, I've not dropped cocktail bottles. I've opened champagne without blowing the cork.
Yeah.
I've spilled ceviche juice over stages. Everything happens in,
Yeah.
in live TV, and that's what's so exciting.
So exciting about it. But I think the point we're really honing in on is that it is possible, if you are passionate about your craft and your work, to be immersed in it full time and to know every part of it, right? There is no, when you're an entrepreneur, there is no time off, really, is there?
No, you're always
Yeah.
hustling, and it's not easy. It's never easy, especially when you don't have those connections initially. It took me years to get to know different editors, to get to know different people at television stations.
Yeah.
For example, I went to Toronto and I wanted to market a food app that I
Okay.
created called Feed Me. It's like Tinder for restaurants.
Okay.
Like, oh, this is going to be an easy sell. I do TV in Montreal. I have good connections there. I have a friend who knows some people in Toronto. I had a really hard time even getting airtime in Toronto, whereas in Montreal it was easy. So it really showed me that those connections were vital. And my advice would be to start with your local market, where you're known, where you have a name, where you have connections, and then an agency, and branch out, and friends of friends can kind of help you grow, especially online. I think online is underrated.
Yeah.
For example, I was written about by one website in a small local paper in Montreal, but they were associated with a larger group, and so I got picked up in Puerto Rico and in Belgium and in Ireland.
Oh wow!
And that gave me so much bigger audience than a local television segment in Montreal did. Because the demographic for television is older. I mean, do you even have a television? I don't know. Like, a lot of my friends don't. So they'll watch online. So if you have that opportunity, that's great. But don't undervalue smaller publications. Don't just aim big.
Got it. Tell me about your work with entrepreneurs. What does that feel like in your daily practice to interface with entrepreneurs and startups?
Yeah, so I do a lot of features about how startups get to a certain point in their business, especially after a year, maybe, when they've had a lot of success and they're kind of looking for that next step. Maybe they're looking to raise some money. And I think that what's hard for a lot of founders to do is to work with the right people to market themselves, because they're often very good at creating a product, but you can't expect to be great at everything. So marketing yourself can be a whole different story. You've got to answer a lot of emails. You've got to write in a certain way. You have to write so that someone wants to answer that email, so that they feel like they know you. And so that can be really difficult for someone who doesn't have that experience. And you get a lot of pitches from people who want to be covered, but there are all these criteria. For example, I write for a website called Beta Kit, which is a cross-Canada tech website, and they cover a lot of, so-and-so raised their seed round. They just hired so-and-so from whatever big company, or they're moving offices, or they're attracting talent, or this accelerator just graduated this class. These are who to look out for. So there's always newsworthy events there, and when you're being contacted from different startups, it really shows when you have someone who has some experience doing that. So that's a skill, to write those kinds of emails, to know when there's newsworthy events that these kind of websites would like to cover.
Mm-hmm. And what does a successful entrepreneur look like for someone like you? What makes you say, yes, I'm absolutely going to answer that email or respond to the pitch?
A great product. Has to be novel, has to be something you haven't seen before. It's all the questions that an investor is going to ask you.
Yeah.
That's what's going through my head. It's like, what's your monetization? Is this sustainable? What's your 5-year plan? What's newsworthy right now in terms of how much revenue have you gotten in the last year? Is that impressive? Is that something angel investors are going to be interested in? Is it VC money you're interested in? Is it a game changer? Is it a market changer? The more novel, the more interesting the story is going to be, and the easier it is for me to sell to readers.
So exciting. Amie Watson, where can we find you online? You have a Twitter feed.
I have a Twitter. I have a couple of Twitters. I have my personal Twitter, which is at Miss Watson with 2 T's.
2 T's.
And I have if you look up Feed Me, it's Feed Me app on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. You'll find me there. where else? And my blog, multiculturiosity.com.
Oh, I want to be you in my next life. Can I? Yeah.
Your life sounds great too.
Oh,
Next time, can we switch this?
Yeah,
The interview?
exactly.
We'll talk about
I'm
your
down
great
for
life.
that. Yeah. Okay, guys, we'll see you soon. Love you so much, and see you in Barbados around this time next year. Let us know if you're coming on the 24 Karat Magic Retreat to Barbados, as we call it, and we'll see you soon. For more tips on this and other PR hacks, publicity ideas, marketing clues, be sure to follow us at Zebra Public Relations. And Amie, we can find you on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at Miss Watson, MISSWATTSON. You can also find me at my blog, multiculturiosity.com.
Oh, such a pleasure. Let's go get a drink. I'm ready. Whew, I'm ready for some rum. Have you been sampling?
Just a little.
Just a tad.
I could do a little more.
Sure. Okay. All right. Talk to you soon, y'all.